So today we're going to talk about being in balance and how the mind affects everything in the body, and everything in the body affects the mind. Everything works together because we're naturopathic physicians, and that's how we work with things. We look at what's going on, what's the root cause of the problem. A lot of times other MDs, for example, when they're looking, their job is to see what's going wrong with you right now and help take care of that issue. So it's more an emergency type basis, critical, we need something now. We want to either do prevention or help you reverse things and get out of it. So with that being said, the other docs are going to be in here shortly. I'm going to do the presentation. You can ask questions, but if you would, remember your questions and hang on to them at the end, and we'll let the other doctors chime in at that point too. Okay. So you may have seen in the flyer that we sent out, it's our thoughts, our mind. Because as I said, what's going on, what we're thinking is the transformation of what's happening in our body. So when we have good thoughts, it's sending out positive endorphins. You guys may have heard of endorphins. So it's changing all the neurotransmitters and making positive effects. If you have negative thoughts, it does the same thing. It goes out and it makes those changes in the body. So this is Dr. Bohr, Dr. Peachy, and Dr. Glenn. Dr. Bohr was Dr. Fong about a year and a half ago, I think it was. She is now a mom as of about 3 weeks ago, and the baby is very cute. Of course, right? And very tiny. The cutest little feet. So, all right, so are you all familiar with naturopathic medicine? A lot of you, yeah, a little bit. So I'm going to kind of go through this for those that are not familiar. So as naturopaths, we do have a 4-year bachelor degree from colleges, and then we go to medical school. So it's a 4-year medical school. That program is specifically for naturopathic physicians. And there are, I believe it's 7 or 8 now, naturopathic schools here in the United States and in, a couple in Canada. Once we get through school, or while we're going to school, just like med students go to hospitals to do their seeing patients, we are going typically to clinics to see patients, and we're doing that in our last 2 years as well, taking a full load of our college classes, of our medical school classes. And then once we graduate, then it's time for exams, which is so much fun. So we do board exams. The same way the conventional medicine does. We have our board that does the testing of us. And once we pass all those exams, then we are licensed. Now I believe it's 18 states that license us as primary care physicians. We can get DEA numbers if we would like, which means we can prescribe medications and we can take people off of medications, which we do when it's necessary. So these are the naturopathic principles. So we're all inundated with this when we go to school. But a lot of us that go to the naturopathic medical school, this is why we're going. We know that nature has a lot of power. We're given all these wonderful plants and other things that we can then take and use to help heal us. That's why they're here. They're great to look at, but they also have the medicinal properties. We want to identify and treat the cause of what's happening. We're treating the whole person, again, head to toe. It's like, what's going on? Maybe GI problems, but why are you having that GI problem? It may be other issues that are causing that. And do no harm, which is why we prefer our botanicals and homeopathy and all of that as opposed to conventional medicine, because sometimes with the prescription medications, there are all the different side effects. And educate the patients. Here we are. We do that in our appointments, as some of you know. We try to tell you what's going on, why we feel it's going on, what we're going to do in the protocols, and how those protocols are going to work for you. So that when you know what's happening, when you know what's going on in your body, you're more likely to do the protocols so that you can get healthy again. So that's what the education part is all about. And then preventing illness. So we have patients on kind of both sides of the track. We have patients who are chronically ill. They have a lot of different things going on, and they come in with a lot of different medications, and they're still not feeling good. So we work with those patients to help reverse some of the stuff that's happening and getting them to have the best quality of life as possible. And then we have patients who walk in and say, you know, I feel great and I want to feel great until I'm 125 years old. So what can I do? How do I take care of that? Okay, and this is kind of what we were talking about with the prescriptions before. And I know this is a little bit hard to read, but what it's showing is the adverse reactions that happen with prescriptions, drugs, here on this side, and these are serious. The red ones are the serious side effects, and then all the adverse effects. Because some of them aren't super serious, but you still may have an effect from it. And these are supplements. So you see there's a huge difference. And we believe that part of it is when, for example, aspirin. Aspirin is one particular component that comes from a plant. They said, oh, this is the active ingredient, so let's take that out, let's synthesize that, and it'll take care of simple pain. But the plant itself has many constituents to it, many ingredients in it. So the part that the aspirin causes the issues with, the other things that are in there help the liver and the kidneys to stay healthy. So that, I think, is a big reason why the supplements work better and don't cause as many problems. Okay, so for the initial visit, when you come in the first time to see us, we're saying average about 2 hours, because we're going to go through everything head to toe. We're going to go through your past history, what's going on for you currently, and trying to be like detectives to pick out all the little pieces to see how everything is coming together. You know, your body wants to be healthy. That's its job, to keep you healthy. So our question is, what's out of balance that is causing the issues? Do you have too much of something? Do you have too little of something? And once we figure that out, then we can bring everything back in balance and your body can do the job that it needs to do. As it says here, we're looking for the underlying cause, and the time is spent with you not only to figure all that out, but again, we're talking about how the mind affects the body. And we need to know what's going on emotionally with you as well. And sometimes people say, well, I felt like I spent the whole appointment with a counselor. And a lot of times that is almost what it is, because of the impact on the physical part of the body. So when we know about you, know about your life, about your family, about your job, all of that, it makes a difference. Okay, then we have the custom protocols. So we are going to figure out what's happening, like I said, for you. Try to rebalance everything so that we know what you need, maybe something different than what you need, maybe something different than what you need. So you're going to get what works for you. Okay. And these are the different types of treatments that we do. We'll talk about exercise. We have a really good friend here who teaches exercise and has done it for many years, so she knows the impact it has on health. So exercise, nutrition, of course, is a big component of it. What goes in here makes a big difference with here. Now this has to be working correctly to absorb all those nutrients to allow the body to get the vitamins and the minerals and everything else it needs. But the nutrition, if all we do is feed our bodies carbs and sugars and the wrong kind of fats, guess what? It's not going to work right. And fats have had a really bad rap. Fats are really good for us. Fats have a lot of functions that they perform in the body, but it has to be the good kind of fats. So we want to make sure that what we're getting is what we should be getting. And it's difficult these days because the advertising. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're on a diet program, and they said everything on television is about food, but all of it is brown. And if you pay attention to that, everything is fried, everything is carbs, everything. I mean, it's one after the next after the next. So they're planting those messages in here. Remember we talked about your mind? They're using your mind big time to try to get you to buy their product. So the thing is, if you make a decision that you're going to be healthy, you know better, and you can stick to a protocol that works for you. And the body feels better. We feel better. We can think more clearly. So with all those changes, it becomes easier over time to ignore, you know, the crazy stuff and eat healthy. Eat healthy to stay healthy, right? Hormones also, and sometimes with hormones, people think of just sex hormones, so estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. But there are many hormones in our body. Our thyroid produces thyroid hormone. Our adrenals produce hormones. So there's many of them, and we want to keep them all in balance. And it can start as young as 10 years old to be an issue, and as old as, what, 90-some years old? I mean, it can go on the rest of your life. The neurotransmitters, we're going to talk more about here. Neurotransmitters and hormones work very closely together. So neurotransmitters are the chemicals that are produced. They, mostly we think about in our mind, but they're actually produced in a number of places in the body, and again, they kind of keep everything running and keep it balanced. And essential fatty acids, we talked a little bit about the good fats earlier. Botanical medicines are the herbs. You'll see us switch those words around from time to time, but essentially those are the plants that we extract all the components from to use as medicine. Acupuncture. So we, in our training, are trained to do acupuncture as well as all the rest of the stuff. We have about 30 different types of protocols that are natural that we can use to help patients. So we will do it if we feel it's needed for our patients. Okay. Homeopathy, has anybody here heard of homeopathy? Yeah, you've used it, I know. So homeopathy is typically, people know that they're little pellets you put under your tongue, but nobody really seems to know what they are or how they work. Some of them are taken from herbs, some are taken from minerals, they come from a lot of different sources. And they are basically diluted so far down that if you test it, there's nothing left in them, in the little pellets, but they do have a reaction. Your body has a reaction when you take them. So they think it's more the quantum physics. I think that's coming out more and more where people are hearing about quantum mechanics and quantum physics. So it's more from an energetic level. What's happening with the body, the frequency of the body is being shifted back to a healthy state depending on the homeopathy that you're given. And pharmacology, like I said, we have DEA numbers. So if somebody comes into me and their blood pressure is 200 over 120, and I can't get it down immediately with herbs, which probably can't, I'm going to put them on a script right now because it's an emergency situation. We can't have somebody having a stroke or a heart attack while we're waiting for our things to work. So we get them on the pharmacology, and now we work on the lifestyle changes to shift things to where it's needed. And physical medicine can be things like what your chiropractor does or what your massage therapist does. So there are some naturopaths that do more of that. We're all trained in school to do adjustments, but not all of us stay with it. So for example, when I got out of school, I loved doing chiropractic type stuff when I was in school, but when I got out of school, I shared an office with a chiropractor. So guess what? You do that, I'll do the rest of the stuff. And so some actually love it and stay and do mostly that type of work. So it depends on the naturopath that you go to. Okay, so before we start on the rest of the presentation, I'm giving my medical disclaimer. For those of you that are patients, this sort of counts for you too, but I'm going to read it. The medical condition information in this presentation is provided as an educational resource only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. It's not specific to each individual, and therefore it's not to be used as a substitute for a visit with your physician. So in other words, I'm just talking to you. We do have, of course, the docs here. I know some of you do see some of the docs here. If there's anything that comes up, we will try to answer from an educational standpoint, but to treat you, diagnose and treat you, you have to be a patient by law. So, thank you for the government for all that wonderful stuff that they protect us from. All right. So now we're getting into the basics of the presentation. And what I'm going to talk about here is the mind and the body, like we talked about before, the physical connection between the two. And we're like a puzzle. We have all these different parts of our system, the mind, the nervous system. I'm going to hold this so that I don't have to keep turning my head here. The nervous system, your thyroid, your adrenal glands, your neurotransmitters, cell function, your sex hormones, that we talked a little bit about that, your heart, circulation, gastrointestinal. This has to be working well for us to do well. So it's a puzzle. Which pieces do you have that work well and which pieces do not work well for you? And how are they all talking and working with each other? Okay, so we're talking today about the mind component and how that helps keep everything in balance. So I don't know if some of you have seen this. Anybody here see What the Belief? Yeah, if you have, okay. So they talked about this in there. They talked about it in The Secret. That's another place. But it's much more detailed than what they talked about there. So there's this Dr. Masaru Emoto who did studies on water and what happens when water is frozen as it's being exposed to different emotional language or music or whatever it happened to be. And he was trying to prove that thoughts and feelings affect the physical. So what happened is, and I've got all the good ones here, when he exposed the water as it was freezing to things like love and joy and happiness and all the good emotions, they formed incredible looking crystals. Each one had a different formation of crystal depending on the word that was used. When it was exposed to anger and hate and all the negativity, they were a mess. They were a disaster. I mean, as far as the crystal formation, there wasn't really a formation. It was just psychotic. We're made up of mostly water. For women, about 55%. For men, about 65% water. So what's the impact of those things, those words, those actions that people do on us? So our brain communicates through our nervous system. Here you see the nerves running through the body, head to toe. The brain is a bundle of nerves. Some people I know don't know that, other people, but yeah, I got it. So the brain is a bundle of nerves and they're connected to everything in the body. Here's the different organs that as the nerves go down, they go to a part of the body, they go to an organ. And then there are other nerves that bring it from that organ back into the system and back up to the brain. So that communication is happening with feedback all the day, every second, every millisecond of every day. And depending on what's going on for your body, if the feedback loop says, uh-oh, I don't have enough of this, the body's going to try to produce more. Outside influence can make those changes. To make things out of balance. Genetically, we may have some variations, and with those genetic variations, they may not allow our body to make the enzymes to react the way we're supposed to react. So that'll throw things out of balance. As the enzymes aren't working, the processing that goes through that may not happen the way it's supposed to. It may get stuck, and then there's a buildup of toxins. That's going to go back to the brain and say, uh-oh, Houston, I have a problem. The thing is, how does the body take care of it? How does it react to that? What does it do? All right. So the brain communicates with neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are the communication signals, and they're the key biomarkers, meaning that depending on what level all these different neurotransmitters are, the level that they're at will depend on the symptom that comes up. So I want to give you an example of some neurotransmitters because some people know what these are and some not. Serotonin is a common one. A lot of people have heard about serotonin. If serotonin is not at the right level, depression sets in. Dopamine is another one. Glycine is another one. So there's a number of different ones in the body. They all have their own function. They all work together to keep things balanced. So when they're out of balance, we come up with symptoms. So every patient here is different, but the symptoms that can happen if your serotonin is too low is going to be the same. People who have low serotonin, like we mentioned a minute ago, will have depression. The question is what's the amount of depression that they have because of the impact of other things that are on it. So a lot of these you can see, we're actually seeing a rise in things like autism, ADD and ADHD. There's a number here that are going on, which again, what we're eating, what we're exposed to, all of that is making an impact on the trigger to the neurotransmitters and the balance. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. All right. So we talked about emotions a little bit earlier and how they trigger the release of the neurotransmitters. So we're going to talk about one, stress. And did anybody here have stress today? I did. I did a bunch of times today. But stress produces cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. These things then can turn around, some very lightly initially, or maybe you don't even notice it initially. But eventually what happens is when these become more and more out of balance, we have things like high blood pressure. Okay? Conventional medicine, you have high blood pressure, what do? You get put on high blood pressure medicine. The problem may not be that is what's needed. The problem may be that your cortisol is too high or your adrenaline is too high. So what we want to do is we want to work on the root cause of the problem. Anxiety and panic attacks. I mean, I think we all in this room probably know somebody that has anxiety for sure, and some people panic attacks. Fatigue and insomnia. So these start setting in. Our cortisol can run high for a long time, and then it starts crashing. When it starts crashing, that's when fatigue starts setting in. Very common reaction that happens when it starts dropping too low is that you start getting tired in the afternoon. About 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you really want to go take a nap, or you don't want to do what you have to do. And I will say women, moms in particular, are really great about going, it's not about me. I have to go pick up the kids, I got to take them to soccer practice, I have to get dinner ready, I have to go do all these different things. That's after working all day long. So push it aside, and we push it aside, and we push it aside. Eventually, it says, watch this. Gets out of balance more, and then it really knocks you out. Anger, memory issues, mood issues, all tied in with this as only one part of the body, only one thing that can go on in the whole body, but this is a big one. Okay, so adrenal cortisol. Cortisol is produced in the adrenal glands, which sit up little teeny glands above the kidneys, and it can trigger something, fight or flight. So how many people have heard of this? Almost everybody, right? Yeah, fight or flight, which affects thyroid function. Thyroid runs our metabolism. So if thyroid's not working correctly, we have problems in every cell in the body. Our immune system. So the immune system, when people think of it, they're typically thinking about things like colds or flus or that. It's part of it, but the immune system's job is much bigger than that. We all have things like cancer cells in our body. I don't know if you guys know that, but we all have it. It's part of our normal processing, the normal function of the body. When the immune system is not working correctly, it doesn't have the ability to keep that under control. And that's when it keeps multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. So we want to make sure that, again, another system in the body is working correctly. GI function. So think about this. You're back in the caveman days, and you're out picking berries, and all of a sudden the saber-toothed tiger comes along. What's the first thing that happens to you? Do you stand there picking berries anymore? No, because you're going to be breakfast for the saber-tooth. So our whole body changes, the whole system changes. Our eyes are now able to see further. We can take deeper breaths. Our immune system is shut down because we don't need to be fighting stuff. We need to save the energy to run. We're in the fight or flight mode. We need to either fight the saber-tooth or we need to run and hide. We're going to run really quickly so our muscles change how they work. If we're digesting those berries, guess what? We need that energy to run. So it shuts down the GI system. It says, later, if you survive, we'll digest this. But for right now, we're using this energy. And it's the same thing as we go through. The thyroid, like I said, it takes care of your metabolism. So when you're in the fight or flight, you need to get your metabolism built up. You can't be in that, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll get away from this tiger here pretty soon. Just hang on. So it's triggered to move faster. Circulation, so that your muscles can get more oxygen to move faster. And then inflammation happens as well because of all these other triggers that are going on. And your sex hormones are diverted to more cortisol to get you out of there, okay? And we talked about muscles. So this whole system, again, is designed to keep us healthy, is to keep us alive. And I don't know what this function is. Okay, so what we want to do is be able to have, we do have power over our body through what we think. And there are ways to change what's going on as far as our health is concerned, which is using retraining through what's called neuroplasticity. So basically, it's behavior modification, but using repetition to change neural pathways. And what I'm saying by that is when we're in the mode of my world is falling apart, oh no, what's going on? We start shutting down certain pathways in our body from our brain to the different organs. And we start using ones that are in that fight or flight mode. And they get stronger. And when they get stronger, they start taking over our everyday routine. So that's where the anxiety, panic attacks, depression, those things start setting in. So what we want to do is learn ways to shift that, to build those neural pathways that are good and not use the other ones so much, start breaking them down and get our body to work better. The result is either health or disease, which we kind of talked about. So the body reacts to maintain homeostasis, which is the balance that we talked about before. The official definition, I'm going to read again, is the tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by physiological processes. So it's a mouthful. Basically, this is what it means. It means our hormones talk to our immune system, talk to our brain and nervous system, and it just keeps going in loops back and forth to try to keep us in balance. And it requires these things here, which we're going to get into in just a second. So health is not simply the absence of disease. And I think that's an important thing to know, because some people think that because they don't get sick very often, that they're healthy, and yet they're not. What they are is they're in this never, never land in between. So not sick, but not really feeling great all the time. So what we want for all our patients and for ourselves is to feel really great, to have our body functioning the way it should be functioning. I tell people that 125 years old I was talking about earlier, that's I'm living to 125, but it has to be a really good 125. Okay, and then when we were talking about homeostasis and I said everything talks to each other, this is what they're using. Okay, the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, neurotransmitters, cytokines, amino acids, cholesterol, and other hormones. So again, what we're looking for is we want to find a balance. We want to find where are you having issues here? What do you have too much of? What do you not have enough of? So we can do that by testing. So I'm starting with GI health because it's probably one of the most important. If you can't put gas in your car, it's not going to run. Same thing with us. We've got to get that gas in our system. The way to do it is by your healthy digestion. If we have inflammation here, we're not going to be absorbing our nutrients. If our stomach is not working correctly, we can't even digest the food well enough to be able to absorb it. If you have allergies, people typically know when they have an allergy. They eat a strawberry, they can break out, they maybe can't breathe. But when you have a food sensitivity, it's a little different reaction. The inflammation is in here, and it may take 3 or 4 days for that to happen. So what we want to find out is what's causing that inflammation, what foods are causing that, so that we can again absorb our food. If this is inflamed, it's not going to absorb, it's not going to work well. So what foods are toxic to you and the degree. So it may be just like with allergies. You may have a mild allergy to one thing, but you have a major allergy to something else. We want to find out the differences there as well, so we can test for that. If your enzymes aren't functioning properly, that's another issue. And I know a lot of times people come in and they say, well, you know, the supplement store told me to go and take enzymes because I'm having GI problems. I can't digest my food well. I don't have good bowel movements. Well, that's putting the cart before the horse, because there are many steps that the body has to have happen so that your body can produce enzymes to help with the digestion. So by giving you enzymes, it's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Maybe you'll feel a little bit better, but you haven't fixed anything. So treatment, we've talked about, stop the toxins, stop eating the foods that are causing you problems, and heal the damage. All right, there is the vitamins and minerals that we were talking about earlier. We actually have a way of testing to see what your levels are. And the testing here is not just regular blood work to see what's floating around in your system. It's actually looking inside the red blood cell. Because again, if it doesn't get in there, it's not doing its job. It can't function. So this particular lab that we use can test all of these things: vitamins, minerals, the amino acids, antioxidants. Also looks at how well you digest your carbs. So that whole test is really very valuable to look and see, and then we can base your protocol again on what you need. What do you have too much of? You've got to move it out of your system. What do you not have enough of? We've got to give you more of that. And then the other is why. Why is that happening? So if we can see all these different pieces of the puzzle, we can put a protocol together for you. Toxicity is all around. What can I say? Just trying to think how to put this. I mean, we can't escape it these days unless we go, I don't know, somewhere way up in one of the mountains. And I'm not even sure we can escape it there anymore. Everything around us is toxic. Our foods are toxic. The air we breathe is toxic. The environments we're in are toxic. I mean, we try to minimize things as much as we can, but we're exposed on a daily basis to all kinds of toxins these days that our parents and grandparents were never exposed to. Our body doesn't know what to do with those things. So sometimes it'll gather them and it stores it in our fat and it starts causing all kinds of symptoms because it doesn't know how to get rid of it. It doesn't have the, we were never built to handle these things. So it stores it, starts causing problems, and for some people, very significant problems. So the major cause of some of these toxins that cause these illnesses are metals. I think a lot of you have heard about mercury fillings and that they're not so good for us. Could be jewelry too, you know, just the transfer through the skin. Pesticides and herbicides, you know, we all get that in our food. There are ways to try and clean your food off when you get it home from the grocery store. Of course, using real organic helps a lot. Household chemicals, so your soaps, your shampoo, your toothpaste, everything that we use these days. If you're not choosing wisely, you're getting exposed to all kinds of chemical pollution. Our food additives, and I want to make sure everybody understands, artificial sweeteners were never made to be in our body. It causes all kinds of issues, a lot of nerve issues, and they're promoted as being very healthy for you. They trigger your hunger. So they put it in foods as low calorie, but then you're going to go eat more food. And it's this big cycle that happens because it's all owned by the food industry. That doesn't even count the damage that it's doing to your body. So if you haven't heard this, do not use artificial sweeteners. If you want a sweetener, stevia, which is an herb, it's from a plant, is really good to use. It doesn't cause any damage to the body. There's no calories in it. And it's 600 times sweeter than sugar. So, food processing ingredients. I don't know if we should call them ingredients, but truly in our foods, molds, fungus, and then all the different additives that they put in there. Those are all toxic to our body. So we work with these. When people have issues, we can test for these, and we can do treatment programs to try to minimize them in the body, get rid of them as much as we can. Okay, so once we figure out what's going on with your system, then what we want to do is repair the damage. That's the first thing. Then we need to replace what your body needs to have. And then rebalancing, once your body starts getting it, make sure everything is balancing again properly, and then restoring communication. So once we fix this, for example, now how's it talking to the rest of the things, and how is everything else going? Is everything else in balance and talking together? All right, so, and I put in some basic treatment protocols. These are very, very general, so not really for very specific to what you may need or you may need. So we talked already about the mind-body connection. So being around things that help your stress, help reduce your stress. Don't worry, choose happy. It is a choice. And then exercising, like we talked about before, really we should be exercising at least 5 times a week. There's some programs out there that do high intensity training. It's a 30-minute program where you hit it hard for 30 minutes, and then your body keeps using that and metabolizing for about 12 hours afterwards. So you don't do that 5 days a week necessarily. Well, don't do it 5 days a week, but it's easier to do. Like a lot of people can't take an hour, hour and a half out of 5 days in a week. So this is an alternative to doing that. Nutrition. We've already talked quite a bit about that. Eating healthy, most people don't realize what eating healthy is, much less how many veggies we need to have in a day. So, of course, carbs and sugars, our body really just needs a tiny bit of carbs. And some people can't handle any kind of carbs, any grains. So they have to go to gluten-free diets. And there's a lot of testing that can be done to see if you need to be gluten-free, but the probably most definitive way is to come off of all glutens for 1 month and see how you feel. And that'll tell you immediately, in a month, immediately. Okay, nutrition, there's a lot of companies out there. It's a billion-dollar industry, several billion-dollar industry, I think now. There's a lot of companies that are bringing things from all over the world. There's a lot of companies that are using the least expensive component, and they sell them in big box stores, and they sell them in your local health food stores, and they sell them in all these different places. When you go to Sprouts, people always say to me, well, I buy my supplements from Sprouts. Okay, are they good or are they not so good? Just because they're from Sprouts or from Whole Foods or from some of these other places doesn't mean they're good quality, because they're after a different variety, because they're in the business of making money just as well. You want highly absorbable, and you want, of course, the best quality, and ones that verify what they have in them. So it's really important. If you're going to be spending the time and money and effort to get healthy, you need to make sure that part of it, which is your protocol, is going to keep you healthy instead of making you worse. And then everybody should be on fish oil pretty much. Good quality fish oil. That's another one that it's really not an easy process to make a fish oil that is not contaminated or that is has not oxidized before you take it. If it's already oxidized, it's not going to do the job when you get it in your system. So that one has to be good quality as well. And then this is one of my favorite sayings. I've had it on my mirror for years and years and years. And it's from Melody Beatty's book, Codependent No More. I don't know if some of you have read it or not. But it's what we manifest in our lives is a reflection of what's deep inside us. Our belief about our own worth, our right to happiness, and what we deserve in life. When those beliefs change, so does our life. So that pertains to everything. It pertains to mind, it pertains to body.